was a popular high school teen with a big heart.
He was loved by everybody. He was there for anybody, anytime.
He was a really likable and caring person.
Until his life was violently stolen while he slept.
It was unbelievable, because I was trying to figure out what was going on.
We pretty much are starting with a blank slate.
It was really a whodunit. Don't have a lot of answers.
Detectives unearth a world of deceit and intimidation.
She said if he would have just kept his mouth shut, this never would have happened.
There were two teenagers bragging about being connected with a homicide.
He was already in custody, so was this something that he had orchestrated?
To reveal a sinister plot.
A fisherman contacted the police department and said, hey, I found this gun.
So that was a twist where you never would have expected that.
The whole scenario was crazy.
And discover a mastermind no one expected.
We were dumbfounded, like, what just happened here?
I don't think anybody thought that this is how it would end.
I felt totally betrayed. I wasn't just shocked, I was floored.
Set against the picturesque backdrop of the Oregon mountains, the small town of Eugene is 100 miles south of Portland.
The community's nice. It's a good place to raise a family. It's a college community. The University of Oregon is there. It's a beautiful area of the Pacific Northwest.
Eugene's a small town, relatively. We're like the second or third largest city in Oregon, but that's still about 200,000 people. It's a quiet place.
In the early morning hours on Monday, October 3rd, 1994, the serenity of this close-knit community is shattered.
A 911 call was made. It was a mother who was in anguish. Her teenage son had been seriously injured, bleeding from his head.
Emergency units raced to the home, arriving in a matter of minutes.
When the first responders arrived, they were able to quickly assess that it was a gunshot wound to the head. And although he was unconscious, he was still alive.
As paramedics battle to save the teen, police arrive to investigate the shooting. Janice Itura identifies the victim as her 18-year-old son, Aaron Itura.
Aaron Itura was almost immediately transported to the hospital.
As detectives get to work, they need to determine who would shoot a teenage boy and why.
In short order, we're preserving the scene, beginning to document it with photographs, and start gathering information. His bedroom had been partitioned off inside the attached garage of the residence. He had furnished it or decorated it as, typical teen male would. He had been in bed asleep with a girl that he was dating at the time. We knew he had sustained a devastating gunshot wound to the head.
The girlfriend who was lying beside him was unharmed. Police ask her to wait with the family while they continue to investigate the crime scene.
And a fragment of the bullet was found at the scene. It seemed like the caliber of the gun was a .38 caliber.
The weapon is nowhere to be found, and there's no sign of forced entry to the home.
Somebody had just opened the garage door. It wasn't locked.
There's nothing of value missing. Detectives wonder if the attacker could have a personal motive.
If somebody had a gun and they went in there to steal property, but the people woke up and discovered them, you would expect both people to be shot. The fact that one person wasn't shot and the other one was would indicate that there's a motive to single that person out.
With the crime scene yielding little information, detectives question those closest to Aaron, his family and girlfriend, who were at the scene of the crime.
I mean, it was a really whodunit out of the blue. Don't have a lot of answers.
The police department were still trying to figure out what happened and who was involved.
The detective questions how Janice came to find Aaron.
Aaron had gone to his room, and his girlfriend and Carrie was spending the night. And then all of a sudden, about 1:30 in the morning, I hear screaming. I went out to the bedroom, and here's Aaron on the bed, and his girlfriend Carrie's just freaked out. And I looked at Aaron, and he had a big old gash on his head. Then I saw blood. And I called 911, and then I just grabbed him and held him for a while. I was trying to figure out what happened.
Aaron Itura was born on December 28, 1975. He was the oldest of 5 children, raised by single mom Janice.
Aaron was a good kid. He was there for anybody, anytime. And he had a lot of responsibilities as far as helping out, because I worked sometimes 2 jobs, and he took care of all of his young siblings.
Growing up, Aaron was always tall for his age and came to be known as a gentle giant.
People described him a big, lovable teddy bear. He was a really likable and caring person with a mom who was really involved in his life.
In his last year of high school, Aaron was popular, well-respected, and easygoing.
Well, he liked to draw. He wanted to go to art school in New York, and that was his goal.
Recently, Aaron had found love with a local girl named Carrie.
She worked at the little neighborhood store, and they had been dating about 4 or 5 months.
Aaron took pride in his community and was highly active in the area's anti-gang movement.
He had the courage to step up and do what was right. He was just the type of guy that people came to with their problems. He was the protector. He watched out for everybody.
Aaron was looking ahead to a bright future. No one can think of anyone who'd want to shoot this young man point blank in his own bed. Investigators turned to Aaron's girlfriend, Carrie, who was lying next to him during the attack. Carrie tells detectives she awoke to the sound of the gunshot, but couldn't see much in the dark.
Carrie, the girlfriend, certainly needs to be looked at as a potential suspect because of her proximity at the time the shooting occurs.
The police decided to take her down to the police station and to talk to her in a lot more detail about what she knew.
While police transfer Carrie to the station, detectives focus on Aaron's family.
In the early stages, it's really important to exclude witnesses from being possible suspects. Part of the procedure of the police was to take gunshot residue swabs from the people in the house.
I needed to get to the hospital. I needed to see how he was, but we couldn't leave. We had to wait till we were cleared through the gunpowder residue testing.
Aaron's mom and siblings test negative for gunshot residue. They immediately race to the hospital.
Janice was almost immediately notified by a doctor that her son's brain scans showed that there was no brain activity.
The nurse was trying to tell me that he's not going to make it.
Later that morning, the decision is made to take Aaron off life support.
I think he just was done fighting. I lost a big chunk of my heart. I just couldn't believe that I'll never see him again.
As Aaron's family grieved their devastating loss, at the station, detectives interview Aaron's girlfriend, Carrie. They ask her if she knows of anyone who would want to harm Aaron.
She claimed she didn't know why this occurred and who would have a motive to have killed him.
When detectives question Carrie about trouble in their relationship, she denies any problems.
Maybe she just wasn't being straight or truthful. Right off, you can't rule out the possibility that someone like Carrie may have shot Aaron for some personal motive.
Forensics check Carrie's hands and clothing to determine if she fired the weapon that killed Aaron.
Gunshot residue wasn't there. Swabs confirmed that she was not involved in a shooting.
With Carrie ruled out as the shooter, police ask her if anything unusual happened that night. She tells police about a mysterious phone call Aaron received just hours before the crime.
Carrie had mentioned a call had been made to the house. It was some girl, just wanting to know if Aaron was there. And then the caller hung up.
Investigators have Carrie walk them through the moments before Aaron was shot.
She said she was laying next to him. They were both fast asleep when she was awakened by some noise, which, as it turns out, was a gunshot.
Then, Carrie reveals a crucial detail.
Carrie becomes a key part of the investigation. She mentioned that she'd seen who did it.
Coming up, the investigation takes a stunning turn.
What we learned indicated that they knew a lot more about what happened than what they'd said originally.
And unravels a tale of betrayal.
And I'm just like, did I just hear her say what I think I heard her say?
There was almost something pathological about their relationship.
To reveal a ruthless killer hiding in plain sight.
They were absolutely a master manipulator.
It was what they call a Jekyll and Hyde.
It was really shocking how the case turned.
Police are investigating the murder of 18-year-old Aaron Itura, gunned down in his sleep. Aaron's girlfriend, Carrie, is the sole eyewitness to the crime, and police are hoping she can provide them with a lead.
The police department are still trying to figure out what is the reason why he would be singled out and killed.
Detectives continue to question Carrie about the details surrounding the murder.
Carrie provided information to the police that it was two killers. She believed they had their faces covered with bandanas and their hands covered, so she could not get a good description of them. She was able to identify them as young males, but not much beyond that.
But who could the two masked assailants be? Police ask Carrie if she can think of anyone in her recent past who would want to harm Aaron.
She might have had a jealous ex-boyfriend who might have had a grudge against Aaron that she would have been aware of. And so we were exploring all of those avenues to find any potential connections.
After interviewing Carrie, police dig into her background and find no serious ex-boyfriend or anyone else that could link to the crime. With no significant leads, investigators turn to the community for help.
We pretty much are starting with a blank slate. The police had kind of fanned out, into the community and were asking people whether they knew anything about what had happened to Aaron Itura.
But no one heard or saw anything suspicious. For this laid-back community, news of Aaron's brutal murder is a shock.
All we knew was this young man had been sleeping in his bed and somebody had gotten in there and shot and killed him. We were dumbfounded, like, what just happened here? This is Eugene, Oregon. You don't have young people being killed right in their home, in their bedroom while they're sleeping. And people were scared.
Detectives begin to look at Aaron's work with the anti-gang group. Had he made some dangerous enemies?
Law enforcement was certainly concerned about gang activity. There was a sense, anyway, that Aaron, he's been at these anti-gang task force meetings, and now this kid has been shot in the head. So it certainly raises questions.
Police learned that Aaron had been working closely with local anti-gang activist Mary Thompson.
A lot of people knew who Mary Thompson was. She was wanting to sound the alarm about gangs in Eugene. And she established herself as kind of the citizen voice among law enforcement and other agencies dealing with that. She was a working mom with a teen, her son Bo, who was getting in and out of trouble.
Mary Thompson was involved in publicizing the threat of gangs. How that developed for her was that her son Bo, who was 16 and had gotten involved in some gang activity and serious crimes.
She said he's a member of a local Crip gang, and if it can happen in my family, it can happen in any families. And oftentimes she was going to various schools and in the media for an anti-gang sentiment.
Mary's home was open to troubled teens trying to avoid gang life, but she needed help with her expanding network.
Aaron got approached in school about assisting with the community outreach. He took that role seriously.
Aaron was very proud. Sometimes I could hear him talking to his sisters about, I've got to do this. I'm going to help some kid someday, and Mary's on the right track. I thought she was amazing. Here's a woman that's 40-some years old, and she is out with Aaron, making people aware, because most people in this town had no idea that this was going on.
The day after the murder, investigators pay Mary a visit, looking for a lead.
She was shocked that Aaron Itura had been shot and killed, and more than willing to try to help in any way that she could. She offered a whole list of names of people that she knew were associated with him.
Then, Mary shares a disturbing detail.
When the police went to talk to Mary Thompson, she told them about a gang member from Portland that was a Crip that had stopped by her house looking for Aaron Itura before the homicide. And she identified him by the name of Sonny and said what kind of car he was driving. And this gang was dangerous.
He wasn't somebody that she previously knew, just that he had showed up and was inquiring about Aaron. Where does he live and what can you tell me about him, sort of thing. Her information was that people in the gang life up in Portland were upset because of Aaron's cooperation in anti-gang efforts. Given the proximity of when this had occurred to Aaron's death, you couldn't ignore that this might all be coming out of people in Portland. She provided a general description of Sonny and of a car that he was driving. He wasn't on our radar. So the information about Sonny was documented and passed on and shared with the Portland Gang Bureau.
While Portland's gang unit tracked down Sonny, Eugene police talked with Aaron's friends. Had Aaron been concerned for his own safety before the murder?
They said before the homicide, Aaron Itura told them a story about a gang member wanting to do harm to him. But there's not a lot of information.
This could be significant. This might, in fact, be gang-related. So we were looking for the active gang member.
Less than 36 hours after Aaron Itura is found shot in his bed, investigators believe the cold-blooded murder of the teen could be tied to his work in an anti-gang group. According to Aaron's mentor, Mary Thompson, a gang member named Sonny had been looking for him.
The result of the inquiry with Portland has come back and they came up blank. They had no information about any Sonny. The car description didn't match anything in their files. So it was a big zero. You know, they were saying we don't have anything. So as a result of that, we were frustrated that we didn't have a suspect.
Then, detectives received the autopsy results.
Aaron sustained a fatal gunshot wound to the head, and it was a single shot.
It was an aimed shot with a .38 caliber to the back of the head. What would go through the brain would have almost 100% chance of causing the death of the person that was hit.
48 hours into the case, with few clues to investigate, the pressure on police increases.
There's a sense of uncertainty and unease, you know, that can permeate the community if you don't solve this crime, if it remains unsolved.
When you're in a small community, you want some answers because somebody out there in the town we live in snuck into the bedroom of this young man and killed him. That's scarier than anything when you don't know any other details.
The lack of progress also takes a toll on Aaron's family.
There was times that I would have been willing to follow Aaron, but I put my grief on the back burner. Continue taking care of my kids because it's not their fault. But it was so hard with just certain songs, certain times. I just would kind of collapse. It's just kind of what you do.
Fortunately, Janice isn't without support. Friends like Aaron's mentor, Mary, help the family get through tough times.
Mary Thompson was very sorry. She couldn't understand who would ever do that. We both were grieving. So I got some really nice words from her. I'm in the mindset of, well, we got to catch who did this, who shot him. And she's like agreeing with me, yeah, we need to find out who did this.
At the station, police search for new leads and find a report about a recent incident involving Aaron, and are surprised when they come across a familiar name.
Mary Thompson's son, whose name was Bo Flynn, was connected to this case. He was 16 years old. Bo had been involved in the juvenile system before for his violence and criminal activity. He was empowered and emboldened by dangerous crime.
We learned, and Mary asked Aaron to keep an eye out for Bo and try to steer him clear of trouble. The plan was just simply for Aaron to spend time with Bo, be a positive influence.
But instead of Bo moving away from trouble, he drags Aaron into it. 3 weeks before the murder, they have a dangerous encounter.
Bo and Aaron were in West Eugene and encountered some other youths, and one of them had some prior issue with Bo. Bo suspected that this kid had snitched him off, or they got into an argument or whatever it might be. The confrontation escalated. Bo, who was carrying a knife, produced the knife and ended up cutting the other kid. Patrol officers arrived, and they both were arrested.
Aaron went to the Lane County Jail. They had to go down and get him. And I was so mad at him that I said, "You're responsible for your actions." But he did know right from wrong. And he was not afraid to stand up for what was right.
Then, Aaron makes a risky decision to testify against Bo. Aaron was killed on October 3rd, just 2 days before he was due to give his witness statement. Was this the reason for Aaron's murder?
We consider the possibility that Bo was involved in the killing, especially as this potential motive emerged that Aaron was a witness in a pending case against Bo that would result in him being incarcerated potentially 3 or 4 years.
Investigators pay a visit to Bo, who's in custody at the state's juvenile facility for the knife assault.
He was already in custody at the time that the homicide occurred, so was this something that Bo had orchestrated?
When detectives interview Bo Flynn and ask him what happened, Bo Flynn says, "I didn't do anything, I don't know anything about it."
At the time, there wasn't any credible information that developed that suggested that he had orchestrated this crime.
The police don't have any evidence that gives Bo's role in the commission of this murder.
Having lost Bo as a viable suspect, detectives are at risk of hitting a standstill in the case. But then, Aaron's mom contacts police with a disturbing new lead.
I told him that somebody heard a couple of other people at the high school were talking about how they were going to take care of the big guy, and we all knew the big guy was Aaron because he was the biggest kid at Willamette High School.
We also were hearing rumors that there were 2 young gang members involved in the community bragging about being connected with a homicide.
Police dig deeper into these rumors, turning to Aaron's friends for more details.
When we're talking to kids that were associated with Aaron, we're just trying to find out, what do you know and who could have done this? Jim Elstad and Joe Brown had been identified as part of this loose-knit group of kids that were often frequenting the Thompson residence. And they were kind of on the fringe. The information persisted that both admitted and talked about the murder itself. They were saying that they had done the killing. They were proud of what they'd done. These kids needed to be contacted. Even as we were working it was really shocking how the case turned.
Police investigating the execution-style shooting of 18-year-old Aaron Itura have a new lead. 2 local teens have been bragging about the killing.
What the word was on the street was Joseph Brown and James Elstad were the 2 individuals involved in the killing of Aaron Itura.
I knew they were friends of Bo's, but these kids were Aaron's friends as well. Jim Elstad grew up with my kids. His little brother was my daughter's best friend. And hearing that he would even be involved was just bizarre, but that's what they were saying.
We were told from the circle of kids that were being identified and contacted, said that Jim Elstad and Aaron Itura had been friends at one time, and that most recently, leading up to the homicide, that relationship had soured. So, a source of friction that should be explored and investigated.
Joe Brown and Jim Elstad, they didn't appear to have criminal records, so there wasn't a whole lot to go on.
Before police can speak to the 2 teens, they get a surprise visit from Mary Thompson.
She indicated that she also heard that Joseph Brown and Jim Elstad might have been involved in the homicide.
But what Mary reveals next stuns the detective.
The homicide happened on October 3rd in the early morning hours, and she tells the police that both Elstad and Brown ended up coming to her house after the homicide and telling her that they had killed Itura.
He acknowledged that she hadn't been entirely candid with us from the beginning. Her explanation for that was, well, I just didn't believe him. I just couldn't imagine them doing it. I wasn't seeing anything in their demeanor that suggests that they had done this homicide, and so I didn't volunteer that information up front because I didn't think it was credible at the time.
But now Mary believes the two teens could have been telling the truth. Armed with this new information, police bring Jim Elstad and Joe Brown to the station for questioning.
When they were interviewed, both of them denied any knowledge of the homicide. Elstad and Brown had agreed to take polygraphs as a way to clear themselves of suspicion. And so they were each polygraphed that same day, and both flunked.
Detectives grill the teens for hours, and eventually they break down and confess.
Brown and Elstad finally acknowledged that they had been involved and had done the homicide.
To understand how Aaron Itura was killed that night, police have Joseph Brown recreate the murder at the crime scene.
He had agreed to come back and do what we call a walkthrough, where you're basically doing a videotaped statement and you're describing, and in some instances you might even enact, what occurred.
Joe tells police he was the lookout, and Jim Elstad was the one who shot Aaron. But what was their motive?
Gradually, what emerged was they were upset because their homie Bo, was at risk of being incarcerated further because Aaron was cooperating with the police and was willing to testify against him in this knife incident.
In their statements, Joseph Brown and James Elstad took personal responsibility for the homicide. They did not say that their activities were at the direction of Bo.
Detectives need something concrete to corroborate their story, so they ask about the murder weapon. When police ask Joe Brown what happened to the gun, he tells them it's in the river.
After the homicide, Joseph Brown throws the gun into the river to dispose of it.
Police search the river for the gun, but can't find it.
The fact emerged, that we were looking for the weapon. A fisherman contacted the police department and said, hey, I don't know if it's connected or not, but I was fishing that stretch of the river and I found this gun. So a patrol officer is sent out and takes possession of the gun from him and books it into evidence. They then do a ballistic check on the gun and they find out it was consistent with the murder weapon.
You have their confession and you've got the murder weapon, so you can corroborate their confession to the point where the conviction of those two people is solid.
On October 6, 1994, Jim Elstad and Joe Brown are arrested for the murder of 18-year-old Aaron Itura.
It was very hard to find out. Jim Elstad shot Aaron while he was sleeping. It was like just unbelievable.
After the arrests, Aaron's mentor, Mary Thompson, reaches out to Janice.
Mary called me. First it was like, well, we need to get together, maybe have a coffee, and I'll buy you lunch. And then she said, if Aaron would have just kept his mouth shut, this never would have happened. And I'm just like, did I just hear her say what I think I heard her say? At that point, I got real concerned. So I called Detective Rainey and told him what happened.
What we learned indicated that Mary knew a lot more about what happened than she had said originally.
For police, Mary's alarming statement is one of many things they are now questioning.
Initially, it was thought to just be this homicide that had been committed by these two guys, but there was just this overriding perception that she was more involved.
Less than a week after 18-year-old Aaron Itura was shot to death in his bed, former friends Jim Elstad and Joe Brown are charged with his murder. But now, the actions of Aaron's anti-gang mentor, Mary Thompson, have detectives thinking the case is far from over.
Mary Thompson's behavior had been raising some red flags.
She failed to mention that Brown and Elstad came to her house that night. It was just a convenient fact that she forgot to mention. And she also had made a call to Janice. That was actually unusual, suspicious in nature.
At that point, the police decided to take her down to the police station and to talk to her in more detail.
Investigators want to know why Mary withheld information surrounding Aaron's murder.
In that interview, she talks about being extremely angry with Aaron Itura after he informed on her son about the knife fight. But she didn't want him to be killed.
Do we know for sure that she's implicated in the murder? No. Can we prove it at that time? No.
Since police lack solid evidence that Mary is involved, they let her go. With the killers behind bars, Aaron's loved ones gathered to say their final farewells.
It was one beautiful, beautiful day. High school kids, teachers, counselors, they all showed up. Mary was there as well. And there was probably 2,000 people. People I didn't even know were there. Aaron was loved by everybody.
5 days after the arrest of Aaron's murderers, police are still troubled by Mary Thompson's unusual behavior, so they dig deeper into her past.
10 or 15 years prior, there was some other events in Josephine County, which is a county in southern Oregon. She had identified herself as being a person that was working as an assistant to prosecuting the drug trade. And it turned out that she was a methamphetamine manufacturer at that time, and that she got caught selling methamphetamine. Looking at Mary Thompson's past, she was engaged in a criminal activity. It was definitely shocking. She was a crime fighter that the community trusted, that had engaged in that kind of behavior. So that was a twist where you never would have expected that.
Mary's history proves she's capable of lying and manipulating to get what she wants. Now investigators wonder what she's capable of in connection to this case.
As we knew and learned more about her, it was pretty eye-opening, shocking even to investigators. Part of the picture that emerged about Mary was her relationship with her son, Bo, and how protective she had been of him.
She'd had a bunch of relationships in her life that had not turned out, and the only one that stayed with her was Bo Flynn, her son. And so she was willing to do things that were antisocial and illegal in order to maintain Bo's relationship with her. She viewed herself as being a peer. Instead of directing her son to be a law-abiding citizen, she chose to get in the criminal gutter with him.
There was almost, I'm no expert, but almost something pathological about their relationship in terms of what a parent will do to protect their child.
She knew that Aaron was the only thing standing between her and her son's charges.
After Bo, the only person that had motive to eliminate Itura as a witness was Mary Thompson.
Detectives start questioning the teens Mary claims she's been keeping out of gangs.
When we're talking to kids that were identified as having frequented the Thompson residence, they weren't involved in school, they didn't have healthy relationships, they were all kind of lacking something in their life and felt that. It seemed that she already had developed a family structure that she was able to manipulate for her own purposes, and she had somehow orchestrated the murder of Aaron Itura, and as a result of that, she began emerging more and more as this prime suspect.
But could Mary go so far as to have Aaron killed?
To advance this investigation, the idea came up about doing a wiretap to see if something was being said here that could be used to either eliminate Mary from suspicion or would lead to evidence to convict her of murder.
On the wiretap, detectives hear Mary's son, Bo, who's on parole, discussing gang activities with other gang members.
They called themselves the 74 Hoover Crips.
They were involved in selling drugs and stealing property. We were thinking it was possible Bo was in charge of the gang.
Just when investigators think Bo is the gang leader, someone else comes on the line.
It became quickly apparent that Mary was calling the shots. She was pressuring people to do stuff.
Mary Thompson's role in the gang is definitely as a leader,
They heard Mary planning robberies, beatings, car thefts, just a hive of criminal activity.
Mary Thompson, in her exchanges, in these intercepted phone calls, clearly is talking the talk. I mean, she knows the lingo, the street language, and she's a very legitimate threat. She tells them she's got connections outside of Eugene even, that if need be, she can marshal to come in and start dealing with people.
But nothing links Mary directly to Aaron's murder until she makes a telling statement.
There's a conversation that she has with a gang member, and she says, "Don't worry, I haven't screamed at you, have I? Aaron Itura got screamed at before he got whacked. He knew how I felt." So she essentially admits to the gang killing Itura.
We ripped off the veneer of her being this concerned mom who only immersed herself in this culture out of concern for her son. Facts that we're developing were pretty revealing.
Though the admission is damning, detectives know they'll need more to secure a conviction.
We felt that we needed a direct witness who would tell us about all these conversations that happened, up and including the homicide of Aaron Itura. Our tactic was to break the gang, essentially, and to see what we could do about getting them to testify against Mary Thompson.
In the cold-blooded killing of Aaron Itura, police have arrested 2 young gang members. Now, wiretaps have revealed Aaron's anti-gang mentor, Mary Thompson, is actually a ruthless gang leader.
Mary Thompson became a prime suspect in the case, and the wiretaps were really instrumental in revealing the extent of the influence that Mary had.
Investigators are now convinced Mary is behind the 18-year-old's murder. But to charge her, they need additional evidence.
We arrested the gang for all of these crimes that they committed that we knew about during the wire, whether it was committing a burglary or stealing weapons.
Investigators then question the teen gang members, hoping to get them to flip on Mary. The prosecutor thinks their best shot lies with one of the youngest members of the gang, named Lisa.
We decided that we were going to give Lisa immunity on the condition that she testified about the gang and about the homicide of Aaron Itura.
Lisa agrees to tell investigators everything she knows.
It became pretty clear not only was Mary the leader of the gang, but when it came to eliminating Itura, the behavior of Elstad and Brown was guided by her.
Mary was always saying that something's got to be done about Aaron. We can't let him testify against Bo, and that shifted to actually killing him.
From Lisa's account of Aaron's murder, the missing pieces fall into place.
The Friday before the homicide, there's a big meeting of the gang at Mary Thompson's house. Mary encouraged Jim Elstad to commit the homicide. On the night of the murder, Lisa's role is that she is the one that calls Itura's residence. And when Itura answers the phone, she hangs up on him. And that information gets communicated back to Jim Elstad and Joseph Brown that Itura is at his house and they should go forward and commit the crime.
Mary tells Brown and Elstad to wait until everyone in the Itura home is asleep.
1:30 in the morning, when Aaron was in bed with our girlfriend, Carrie, they were both fast asleep. Brown and Elstad had snuck into the room, and Joe Brown was the lookout. And then Jim Elstad hadn't hesitated and fired once into Aaron's head. Carrie then was awakened by that noise. By then, Elstad and Brown had fled the garage. They go to Mary Thompson's house after having committed the homicide, and then Joe Brown gets taken to the river, and Mary Thompson takes him there to dispose of the gun. And this is kind of significant. That was even done at her suggestion.
At the outset of the investigation, Mary Thompson went to police with information on Brown and Elstad in an attempt to throw police off her trail.
Throughout all this, of course, Mary's trying to keep her fingerprints off of everything, so she's evading responsibility. But her influence, it resulted in Aaron Itura's death.
Mary Thompson was absolutely a master manipulator. That was demonstrated many, many times.
In February 1995, Mary is charged with aggravated homicide for her role in killing Aaron Itura.
I was floored. I just had no idea that Mary could have been involved at that extent. It was just what they call Jekyll and Hyde, you know. I felt totally betrayed by another mom.
I don't think anybody suspected when she was teaching us about gangs that she actually was planning the whole thing.
Everybody was trying to do the right thing by her and her crusades, and her telling me how amazing my son was, and the idea that he would go out and help her and then find out that she would have murdered my son herself.
In December 1994, Joe Brown and Jim Elstad received 10 and 16 years respectively after pleading guilty to the murder of Aaron Itura. Almost 2 years later, on June 4th, 1996, Mary Thompson goes to trial and pleads not guilty. Gang members testify in court, supporting the prosecution's case.
They all eventually, came on board and were effective witnesses.
After a 6-week trial, on July 23rd, 1996, the jury finds 41-year-old Mary Thompson guilty for her role in the murder of Aaron Itura.
It's been such an emotional trauma on us all. It's like, it's not only me that she's hurt, it's not only my son that she's destroyed, it's my family, his friends, the kids involved, everybody.
She's probably been doing this her whole life, but she didn't win.
Mary Thompson is sentenced to life in prison for aggravated murder, among other charges, including hindering the prosecution.
When you think of the level of deception that she perpetrated and then ultimately to see her held responsible for that, that's a real satisfying feeling as an investigator. The whole case from beginning to end was unsettling. I don't think anybody would have gone into it thought that this is how it would end.
Aaron's loved ones find relief in the closing of that dark chapter in their lives.
What did you think reading his journal?
It sounds like the mind of a sociopath. They will kill your dog and then go help you find it.
Tonight on an all-new 2020, a tale of love, lies, videotape, and murder.
Charged with premeditated murder, kidnapping, and poisoning.
An explosive teenage love triangle that started in high school and ended in a shallow grave. With a bombshell courtroom decision just days ago. Just now we've got a verdict.
There were some reporters that even squealed.
Two boys, best friends, vying for the same girl and even killing for her.
It was sickening.
Here tonight, her first network interview.
I'm freaking out.
We'll take you inside the mind of a teenage killer. But which one? From surveillance cameras to the police interrogation room.
Was there a moment during that interrogation that you said, I'm speaking to a murderer?
To the witness stand.
Now I have to have this person, this monster, staring at me while I'm on the stand.
From his psychotic secret journals to caught on tape, buying a shovel, duct tape, and sleeping pills. A murderer's startup kit.
One way or the other, that kid was dying that day.
Tonight, two's company, three's a crime. Here's David Muir.
Tonight, as so many parents help their kids pack and get ready for that big moment heading off to college, another family this evening remembering sending their son off. He would disappear just weeks into his freshman year. Later, the gruesome discovery, where he'd been left. And right here tonight, his girlfriend speaking out to 2020 in her first network interview about what it was like to be trapped in a love triangle that would turn deadly. Matt Gutman in Florida on this case from the start.
It's a twisting obstacle course through swamp and thicket. Still, Carlos Aguilar knows this rutted drive like a father knows the contours of his son's face. It's a route he's driven so many times, leading to the site where the body of his teenage son, Christian, was discovered 2 years ago. This dirt track is getting narrower and narrower. It's amazing that anybody found this body. We've been following Carlos now for almost 30 minutes off of State Road 24 in the wooded wastelands of northern Florida.
The road is not that bad.
This road?
Yeah.
No, it's not that bad, but it's not easy.
Yeah, now you're seeing this, you know that it was impossible for us, even with 500 people, to find them.
This hard-working immigrant family from Colombia plucking weeds and wetting the earth with their tears considers this sacred ground. There's a cross with rosary beads. The name Chris is spray-painted on a nearby rock.
He's like a father's dream.
Yes, the name of Christian means a gift from God. So it was a gift from God.
You said that God has been with you through the grief.
He chose this cross for me.
Life wasn't supposed to end here so soon for the 18-year-old scholar with the dancing eyes and the megawatt smile.
What was your brother like?
He was shy with people he didn't know, but once he got to know you, he would just open up. He would just start cracking jokes, start telling you things about himself, just any way to get you to laugh. He would try to find a way.
So how did Christian Aguilar end up in this marshland, bound, face down in a shallow grave, what the cops call an enemy-style burial?
This was some type of nefarious act. Somebody was trying to conceal the body of a person. We find that most generally in cases of murder.
It's a story that made headlines up and down the Florida Turnpike.
A search is underway for missing University of Florida student
and got national attention.
I still feel my son is still alive in my heart.
The twisted murder mystery started at this elite charter school in Miami. Christian Aguilar was known for his easygoing cool, his charisma, and his taste for hip-hop.
I get it custom. You a customer, you ain't...
So that's one thing that you and Christian had always shared, is love of hip-hop, and specifically Kanye.
I mean, to this day, I still love Kanye West, so yeah. You know, we would just hop in his car, go with him to his house, hang out for a while.
At the time, Erica Freeman was dating Christian's close friend, class clown Pedro Bravo.
So tell me more about Pedro in high school.
He was always quite sarcastic, quite funny. He was able to make me laugh so easily. He was very much an animal lover. I mean, he liked action movies, you know, he liked superheroes.
The beauty with the big hazel eyes is the center of Pedro's world.
We'd go out, we'd go on dates, we texted all the time.
Did you say you loved each other?
Yes, we did. We did say we loved each other. And for a long time, I thought that was kind of what love was like.
It seemed their love is built to last.
I mean, not many relationships go almost 3 years, but...
Especially not in high school.
Yeah, it's kind of unheard of.
Christian Aguilar was part of the couple's clique. They all go to prom together. But as graduation approaches, Pedro and Erica's puppy romance is almost over.
At one point, you decided that this relationship wasn't working for you.
Yes, I did. I had talked to him about it. I was like, you know, maybe we should go on a break. I don't think I'm happy. I felt like he almost manipulated me at that point of my life.
Erica breaks up with Pedro, and abruptly, the class clown's laughter is replaced with tears.
He was very emotional about it. He was very, you know, he cried a lot. He was very, I mean, it was not what I was expecting at all when I broke up with him.
So when you broke up with Pedro, somewhere in your mind were you thinking, well, maybe I could start something with Christian?
There's a little part of me that kind of hoped that, you know, Christian made me really happy and we had so many things in common, but a larger part of me was like, you know, it's never going to happen.
She would leave Pedro behind to attend Santa Fe Community College in Gainesville and study biology. Coincidentally, Christian is heading to Gainesville also, but to the swamp. Home of the orange and blue University of Florida Gators. His future full of promise. He has a scholarship, gets financial aid, and plans to study biomedical engineering. And when he and Erica run into each other in Gainesville, suddenly sparks fly.
It was crazy. We had these smiles on our faces from ear to ear, and I mean, we just looked at each other like with these dumb faces, like, is this really happening?
That sounds like true love in a way.
I think we were soulmates.
Erica has moved on. Her ex has not, abandoning his plans to study engineering at a college in Miami and moving to Gainesville to enroll in Erica's college.
When is the first time that you realize, oh man, Pedro's in Gainesville.
He actually sends me a text message, and I'm kind of thinking, how this doesn't sound normal, you know. No one just packs up all their stuff and moves to a different city, you know, so far from their family. For a girl.
No, it wasn't normal. Neither was the journal Pedro kept, a brooding meditation on his quest to win Erica back. "No one will stop me," he wrote. "I will get out of Miami and into Gainesville, and I will get her back."
I just was kind of like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? Should we tell him? Should we not tell him? Should we, you know, should we just live our lives and kind of if he sees us or meets us or something, we'll worry about it then?
2020 obtained that journal and sketchbook, which would prove central to the story. In it, Pedro's personal and meticulous self-help plan to get rid of acne, whiten his teeth, and even wear a red shirt because he thinks it will be more eye-catching to the opposite sex. His handwritten musings winding around seemingly unrelated sketches of cartoon characters, monsters, and sometimes sentimental doodlings.
They almost look like he could have been a cartoonist, you know? I mean, they're very beautiful pieces of art.
His drawings, what kind of drawings were they?
I just saw, you know, pictures of hearts. There was captions next to the hearts. You know, there were broken hearts and hearts in tiny pieces.
Adding insult to injury, Pedro now hears through the grapevine that his true love's heart now belongs to one of his best friends, Christian. The journal revealing his increasing anguish. "I feel as if someone stabbed me, and I bleeded out and died. I want her back. Please, I'll give anything."
It's September 7th, and this is the 34th Street Wall. Erica agrees to meet Pedro here. It's a place where for years UF students have come to paint graffiti, but this is an awkward moment at best because right away Pedro asks her if she's dating Christian. She says no.
He confronted you with the pictures of you and Christian.
He showed me a picture of me standing next to Christian, and I was just like, listen, we're friends, you know, we're hanging out, we know we're not dating, we're just hanging out.
But you lied to him.
I did lie to him, yes.
Why did you lie?
I just felt like it wasn't the appropriate time to tell him that. You know, I don't want to push this kid at all. I don't want him to think anything, you know, that might throw him over the edge.
But Pedro is spinning out of control. He's even been talking suicide. And then, curiously, he calls Christian for help.
Pedro calls Christian on a payphone, and he's like, I'm really depressed, and I was wondering if we can talk, you know, so maybe you can give me advice about how to deal with this, you know, depression.
Did he ask you if he should go, what you thought?
We were a little concerned that maybe he would try to fight him or something of that sense, but, you know, we talked about it, you know, you're going to meet on UF campus, you're going to be fine.
They met at The Hub, the college bookstore here at the heart of this throbbing campus of the University of Florida. What happened soon after will change 3 lives forever.
I started calling him, I started texting him, he was not answering. I was kind of like, well, you know, I got to do something, I have to do something.
When 2020 continues.
2020 continues with Matt Gutman.
Let's face it, we live in the United States of surveillance, where every moment, from the shocking and the trivial to the outrageous and mundane, is an open target for exposure. And on September 20th, 2012, almost every moment of Pedro Bravo's day was captured in the bitter grays of surveillance cameras. He and Christian met at 1:39 p.m., head to lunch, then go to this Best Buy. A receipt shows Pedro bought a Kanye West CD with cash and used his rewards card. At 4:11 that afternoon, Bravo drives his friend to this parking lot. The two sit in Bravo's navy blue Blazer at this spot. No one gets in or out of the vehicle. About 2.5 hours later, security cameras show Bravo pulling out of that Walmart parking lot. Christian Aguilar, he's never seen alive again.
If you hear that the last person that was with your son was your son's girlfriend's ex-boyfriend, you kind of link one or two together. We all started having our doubts and suspicions.
Now, at the same time that Pedro was being tagged by all that surveillance, Erica Freeman was frantically trying to find Christian.
I kept texting him and kept calling him, and it was really strange that he wasn't answering. It just wasn't like him. I'm trying to calm myself down. Yeah, there's a perfectly reasonable explanation for this.
Back at Pedro's apartment, what security cameras pick up next was suspicious and disturbing. Bravo arrives, then immediately leaves his apartment. Where he goes next is an issue of contention because 30 minutes into his drive, he deliberately turns his phone to airplane mode.
So he puts it in airplane mode where his phone is going to be detected.
Ken Brennan is a private investigator hired by 2020 to review the case.
He's sharp enough to know, the police can triangulate cell phones.
He's off the grid for about 5 hours before surveillance cameras capture him at a nearby McDonald's, picking up a Big Mac and a Dr. Pepper before finally heading home.
He knows that I want to dump the body, and I want to dump it far enough away from where the crime occurred. So he wants to get the body out of Gainesville, far enough away where it's in another jurisdiction. It's a lot harder for the police to investigate a crime that's outside their jurisdiction than one in their own.
4 a.m. in the morning, and Christian is still missing.
I call Pedro, and it starts ringing, and it's ringing, and then finally he answers, and, the first thing I'm asking was, where's Christian? And he's just like, no, I dropped him off, we got into a verbal argument, and, I'm freaking out. And he's just like, listen, it's late, I'm sure he made it home, he just didn't call you.
By daybreak, Erica is panicking.
You call his apartment, he's not there. He's not at your place either.
I call Pedro, and at this time, I'm not asking him. I'm telling him, listen, you need to come with me to the police station.
9:44 in the morning, and both Erica Freeman and Pedro Bravo go to the campus police station to report their friend is missing. Sergeant Steve Wilder was suspicious from the get-go.
When you first saw Pedro Bravo come in there, into that room, what was your first impression?
It didn't take long interacting with him and talking to him that I knew that there was really something that he was holding back.
I don't know where he is.
At what point do you begin being suspicious of Pedro?
Honestly, we even walked into the police station, and I still didn't think Pedro was capable of doing something so horrendous. I mean, this guy that's, shy and, he wouldn't hurt a fly, he loves animals and, he's hardworking in school.
Never seemed violent.
Never seemed violent.
Pedro says he came here to help, but everything that comes out of his mouth only cements his status as the prime suspect.
We're finding out new stuff that you haven't talked to me about before. But I can tell you I was in that area.
At first, Pedro tells investigators that he left Aguilar in the woods, not far from Walmart, after arguing with him in the car.
I told you everything I know, and I just drove away, while he was still there.
But with every question, a new variation in his story. Now, Pedro adds that there was some kind of physical altercation.
He struck him one time with his hand. Blood? No blood. He was already bleeding. Struck him with the other hand, right? Yes. Side of the cheek.
It had gone from, I punched him one time and made him get out of the car, to I forced him out of the car, punched him repeatedly, to I punched him repeatedly, landed on top of him, punched him again repeatedly, and left him unconscious, but still breathing.
I'm going to be honest, I wanted to hurt him, really hurt him for doing that.
He can see by his gestures and the motions that he's making that they both understand each other, where the suspect realizes, I'm with a guy who's been around for a long time. He knows what's up. I might be able to BS other people, but this guy knows better.
Was there a moment during that interrogation that you looked at Bravo and said, I'm speaking to a murderer?
I knew, certainly, after speaking with him for just a few minutes, that I was speaking with someone who was trying to be extremely deceptive.
You saw Pedro Bravo. He's not a very big guy. And when you think of him knocking somebody who's 8 inches taller than him out of the car and beating him up, what do you think?
I have that old saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog.
And I turned around and I just punched him in the face. And... what did he do? Well, he grabbed his nose. Because I punched him in the I turned around and I hit him in the face.
When he starts fumbling over himself and he starts coming up with these stories, they know they got the right guy. Now it's a matter of gathering the evidence enough to be able to arrest this guy and then ultimately to convict him.
After 8 hours of interrogation and rambling answers, Pedro has still not confessed to any crime. But tellingly, he keeps referring to Christian in the past tense.
He was a really good friend.
We know that he's not coming back, okay? You know he's not coming back.
Look at that again. A subtle but fateful nod of the head. And with that, the case against Pedro Bravo has begun.
You have the right to remain silent.
And so has the search for Christian Aguilar's body. It was the largest and most publicized search in Gainesville history. Hundreds of people, friends, family, volunteers, even psychics, combing 10 square miles of woods and ditches in search of clues.
I'm looking for people's heart that can come and help me. I'm looking for somebody that can walk with me. That's the only thing that I'm asking.
God, today we come before you and we pray for the Aguilar family.
Candlelight vigils pop up for the missing teen in Gainesville, Miami, the family's native Colombia.
We had hope of finding him. I mean, it slowly started going away when you're reaching day 4 and 5 and there's no trace of him.
So you knew that he was dead, but you were not willing to accept the fact that he was going to remain missing.
Yes.
8 days after Christian's disappearance, even though no body has been discovered, the state charges Bravo with kidnapping and first-degree murder.
It was sickening, almost, just because, you know, we knew him for so long, and, you know, Christian was his friend, and I'm just there, like, you know, crying, and we're just feeling like, you know, he's not going to come back. We're not going to ever see him again.
Knowing that Christian's family and the love of his life are all in agony, Pedro still offers no information about his friend's whereabouts. Then, 22 days after his mysterious disappearance, 2 hunters in search of firewood found Christian's body in the swamplands 60 miles southwest of Gainesville.
A body found east of Cedar Key.
The Aguilar family tells us they feel like it's their son.
They tell me, you know, listen, the search is over. You know, they found him. Christian's gone. And I mean, now I'm starting to shake, and it was like this sense of relief, and at the same time this sense of overwhelming pain.
When we come back, lights.
48 minutes. He uses his flashlight out there.
Camera.
You know he's not coming back.
And courtroom action to prove how the young freshman taught himself Murder 101.
As the suspicion and evidence mounts here tonight, our question for you at home: have you ever been involved with someone who just can't let go? We're tweeting throughout the hour. Use the hashtag ABC2020. I'll be right back.
2020 continues with Two's Company, Three's a Crime. Once more, Matt Gutman.
As life in the college town of Gainesville rolls on, investigators spent 2 years building their murder case against Pedro Bravo. Erica burying her grief in her studies. She was majoring in biology at Santa Fe Community College.
During all this time, I felt like Christian was kind of near us, kind of watching over us. And I felt like he was there with us, trying to comfort us, trying to give us, you know, it's going to be okay.
All rise for the jury. Let the record reflect that Mr. Bravo is present in the courtroom with his counsel.
Be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes. But when the trial finally begins, the defendant is very much on the defense.
Charged with premeditated murder, kidnapping, and poisoning.
His high school friend, UF student Christian Aguilar, in the trial of Santa Fe student Pedro Bravo.
Pedro Bravo and Christian Aguilar were high school amigos. But all that ended when Christian swept Pedro's former girlfriend, Erica Freeman, off her feet.
It was a very passionate person, very romantic. I love that about him. I love everything about him. I used to tell him, I was like, you know, the world's gonna end right now, and if I'm in your arms, I don't care.
Now, Pedro stands accused of murdering Christian, and it looks like there's a mountain of evidence to prove it.
With all of this evidence amassed against him, he's got a very narrow opportunity to tell a story that's even remotely plausible.
From the outset, the prosecution pulls no punches.
Body in the wooded area.
painting Bravo as a jealous rival plotting revenge against his former friend.
This is a story as old as time, a classic story, the Cain and Abel story, the elimination of a rival, fueled by jealousy, hatred, anger. He has an obsession with her. He has an obsession with getting her back.
Erica takes center stage as the prosecution asks her to recount her story.
And I did not want to continue doing a long-distance relationship. And now I have to have this person, this monster, you know, staring at me while I'm on the stand. And I can just feel myself, like, aching. And I just don't even want to look that way. I don't want him to look at me. I don't want him to see me ever again.
The prosecution presents Pedro's journals as proof of his disturbed state of mind. Page after page of teen angst and anguished obsession.
With everyone out there wanting blood, wanting me gone, I will give them what they want.
There was also this self-loathing suicide note he penned in jail.
I feel terrible, and every day in here is the day spent waiting to die. I am a monster for having hurt Chris the way I did.
At one point, she breaks down in tears.
All of this was focused on you. You were at the center of this all.
Yes, a lot of it was with his obsession for me and how he wanted me back and how he wanted to be with me.
What did you think reading his journal?
It sounds like the mind of a sociopath or a sick person. For someone to be that selfish and that controlling, that manipulative, you know, it's almost like what they describe sociopaths, you know, they will kill your dog and then go help you find it.
Prosecutors also start piling up the circumstantial evidence compiled over the 2-year investigation. The jury learns that just 4 days before Christian's disappearance, Pedro came here to a nearby Walmart and buys an ankle wrap and gets $80 cash back. He then comes to this Lowe's where he buys Hot Shot pesticide, a Gatorade, and a shovel. Then, for some reason, he heads back to that Walmart. And Pedro walks in with that shovel. He purchases sleeping aids, duct tape, and a knife. He pays cash. Then there's that staple of 21st century criminology, the computer evidence. Turns out that Pedro Googled suspicious search terms such as buying anesthetics. What is chloroform, and how do sleeping pills kill you?
At 1:35, he does a search. Good anesthetic chemical. At 1:35, he does another search. Can rubbing alcohol knock someone out?
The prosecution claims that days after Pedro completed his homicidal research, he arranged to meet Christian. Reporter Stephanie Bishara of ABC affiliate WCJB has been covering the story from day one.
The state put together a timeline, a sequence of events where, you know, where he was from when he got together with Chris all the way to nighttime. Christian holding that Kanye West CD and Pedro right next to him. That is a picture that, you know, no one will ever forget.
The two sat parked in Pedro's SUV at that Walmart. According to the prosecution, this was the scene of the gruesome murder. It claims that Bravo strangled Aguilar inside his car after knocking him out using Gatorade laced with drugs.
Christian Aguilar struggles for his life. He reaches for the door. He scratches the ceiling. This is an enemy burial. This is indifference to life.
And for the CSI types in the jury box, prosecutors have a cornucopia of forensic evidence.
The most damning evidence against Pedro is the blood that was found inside his SUV.
Blood in Pedro's car and on a pair of insoles. Christian's backpack containing his wallet was balled up inside Bravo's closet, and the residue in his car matched soil samples from the site of Christian's shallow grave. And then a piece of irrefutable evidence, the tear pattern from the roll of duct tape Pedro bought at that Walmart.
They literally were able to match the tears of the duct tape found on the victim's body with tears on duct tape on Pedro Bravo's own car.
It is a chilling chain of evidence, but the defense argues that all of it, from the shovel and the computer searches to the poison pesticide and sleeping pills, was intended not for homicide, but for suicide.
He's out there in the woods, he's drinking this concoction, threw up all over himself, and he's like, well, maybe this is a sign from God that I shouldn't do this.
Pedro still needed the jury to believe that his statement to police was true. He beat Christian up, but left him alive. And now he's going to have to sell that story himself. Coming up, Pedro takes the stand.
You swear or affirm any testimony you give this jury today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I swear.
The jailhouse snitch and the plot to use that shovel to put more victims in the ground. Stay with us.
Convicted felon?
Yes, sir.
Do you know how many times you've been convicted?
9 times.
The plot thickened with Michelangelo's testimony.
The felon shared a cell with Pedro Bravo in the fall of 2012, and when they met, Angelo dispensed with the small talk.
You know, I was like, you probably killed that kid, you know.
And what was his response to that?
He really didn't answer, you know.
Later, when Bravo does speak, it's of his 2 main preoccupations, writing and death.
He'd asked me, you know, to borrow a pen and my shoelace. And I asked him what for, and he said so that he could write a suicide letter to his parents and to use the shoestring to kill himself.
Bravo was put on suicide watch for a few weeks. Angelo says when the young man returns, Bravo has shifted his mindset from suicidal to scheming. Now he's concocted a way to walk free.
What did you think it was?
A way to basically get the charges thrown out in this case or get the charges dropped against him.
And did you believe it was offering you money to help?
Yes, sir.
Bravo's plan was to use Angelo's outside gang contacts to commit murders similar to Chris's to make it appear that a serial killer was on the loose, thus leading suspicion away from Bravo.
Was it ever brought up about the shovel and what you would need to do with the shovel as part of the plan?
The prosecutor keeps digging for more details, specifically about that shovel Bravo purchased.
I would have to go get the shovel to, I guess, copycat that murder to make it look like somebody else had did it.
But Angelo has a plan of his own. He cut a deal with prosecutors to become a jailhouse snitch, earning Bravo's trust and extracting incriminating details like these.
He said that he was going to try to poison him with a mixture of sleeping pills and pesticide mixed with soda. His backup plan was to have a knife, you know, to cut his throat. His main plan was to choke him with a moving strap.
Eventually, Michelangelo completes his masterpiece, a full confession from Bravo on the Aguilar family must now endure as the last moments of their son's life play out in graphic detail.
He told me that he, you know, basically put a moving strap around the kid's neck and braced himself against the seat. He said that he remembers watching the radio, the clock on the radio, and said it took like 13 minutes for the kid to, you know, I guess die.
Did he ever make any comment to you about security guards at Walmart?
Yeah, he, at one point he said that he kind of got freaked out because while he was holding onto the strap that the security guard had rode by.
Angelo is a full-service snitch. He even leads cops to the hidden location of that now infamous shovel.
Did he in fact tell you where the shovel was located?
He said a wooden walkway bridge type thing.
Bravo's defense says Angelo's credibility is shot since he was testifying in exchange for a reduced sentence. But can they overcome all that video?
Surveillance video of Spyglass Apartments, surveillance video of Walmart. You can see the two together.
With all that physical evidence piling up against him, the most important defense witness in this trial was Pedro Bravo himself. In fact, the 20-year-old is the only witness the defense calls.
There were some reporters that even squealed. I mean, and 2 of them gasped. Everybody was very much waiting for that moment.
As his parents look on stoically, Bravo tries to charm the jurors, resurrecting the old class clown, conversational, even jovial at times. Bravo describing his last-ditch effort to win Erica back.
I still loved her, and I really wanted to get back with her, so other than getting my classes done, I also had a set idea that I'm going to go get her back. I'd keep telling myself, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this.
But what exactly was the this? Bravo admits that when he discovered that Erica was dating Christian, he snaps.
They've been going out for about like 2-3 weeks. And at that moment, I'm just instantly like, I'm crushed. Because he's one of my best friends.
He says that as he descended into a life of despair, he was consumed by thoughts of suicide that had plagued him for years.
I was too nervous to do anything with knives because I don't like pain. And I couldn't bring myself to hang myself or anything like that. So the only way I could see it was I tried to take some pills, see what would happen. But lo and behold, I'm still here.
Speaking of suicide, remember that shovel?
All I could tell was that he didn't get up right away, but that he was still moving.
Still breathing?
Yes.
But here's the thing. So much of this story was captured by security cameras. But the one piece of video Pedro needs to be on tape simply doesn't exist.
We don't know of any surveillance video that shows the two had an encounter or a fight.
No video, and for 22 days, no Aguilar, until his body is discovered face down in that shallow grave, buried, as cops say, enemy style.
The defense really tried to come up with a credible story. Now, do we believe that? I'm not sure.
But what does the jury believe? We're about to find out because as we're conducting this interview, a voice from the courthouse calls out.
Like Pedro wrote it. Let's go. We got a verdict.
The verdict is next.
2020 continues with Matt Gutman.
Judgment day for Pedro Bravo. The Aguilar family hustles in for a decision. Carlos, the anxious patriarch, needs a moment to gather himself.
Everybody is starting now to move back into the courtroom. Christian Aguilar's family has gathered here en masse. All day, Carlos has looked very calm. But right now, this is the tensest we've seen him. This is the culmination of 2 years for him.
It has already been a long day for the family. Nearly 8 hours of closing arguments. The prosecution and defense taking their last shots at a jury of 8 women and 4 men.
I think you'll find that the fight did happen at Stripes. Find that the law enforcement did nothing to check out whether or not the fight happened at Stripes. And when you do that, I think you'll find my client not guilty.
The prosecution says Bravo's the mastermind of a murderous plot, reminding the jury of Pedro's police interrogation and his curious choice of the past tense.
Throughout the interview, he says and refers to Chris was a good friend. He is the only person on the planet who knows that Chris is in the past tense.
As the jury takes the case to the deliberation room, all the Aguilar family can do is wait and worry.
There's that moment when the jury's deliberating that you're just thinking, what's taking them so long? What happens if they find something? What happens if there is a reasonable doubt?
There are 9 days of testimony and more than 1,000 pieces of evidence to consider. But after a mere 3 hours, the jury is back.
We, the jury, finds as follows as the defendant, Pedro Andres Bravo. In this case, as to count 1, the defendant is guilty of felony murder, 1st degree.
Bravo stone-faced after being found guilty of all charges. The Aguilar family, always respectful inside the courtroom, takes to the hallways for a rare moment of catharsis.
Alexander, how do you feel? I don't know how I can really describe this.
The judge said this is your day of reckoning to Bravo. Do you think life in prison is enough for him?
I think that that's the maximum that he can pay for the life of my son.
Later, they return to remind the judge of the toll this case has taken on them.
I cannot tell you or quantify the pain that we have going through.
Their brief moment of relief comes to an abrupt halt as the killer gets one last twist of the knife.
I know in my heart that I did not do anything to hurt my friend, to put him beyond that point and cause him to die. I know in my heart what I did, and I know God knows what I did. So I'll take whatever sentence is given to me, be it life without parole, and I will do it.
You know, this was a person we knew. This was intentional. None of this had to happen.
This is your friend. This had been your former love.
Yes, yes. It just makes it all so worse.
This is your day of reckoning.
Judge James Colon giving him exactly what he asked.
Count one, I sentence you to natural life in prison with no possibility of parole.
After the verdict, family and friends go their separate ways. The Aguilars once again making that long drive to that makeshift shrine in the middle of nowhere. And the former girlfriend, she still has her whole life ahead of her, just not the one she thought she'd have.
I think we would have gotten married eventually. He was such a good person. He was just so kind and so considerate and so compassionate. I always feel like when I describe him, I'm never describing him enough, you know, like there's something missing. You know, you had to meet him. And I miss him every day because it doesn't go away.
As we head into this weekend, Erica right now is at orientation as a junior at the University of Florida, the very same college Christian once attended. She's now planning to major in criminology, and the school's College of Engineering has awarded an in memoriam degree to Christian, the first student there to ever receive such an honor. I'm David Muir. For Elizabeth and all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, thank you for watching. Have a great weekend. Good night.
Police emergency.
It's an emergency. I've just walked in and found my mother's body lying there. I'm completely dead.
It was fairly obvious this was going to be a big story.
We've spent millions of pounds on this investigation, the most expensive investigations that Hampshire police have ever run.
That type of thing doesn't happen around here.
Why was this little old lady killed?
This is a murder.
Nestled beside the River Itchen sits the pretty hamlet of Brambridge.
Brambridge is typical of these tiny little hamlets that have got very, very few homes there. Everyone really knows everyone. It's a very friendly kind of place, and you've got your little store, and all community life is around those areas. It attracts a lot of visitors simply because of the River Itchen. There are lovely walks along the river there. Again, one of the most beautiful spots in England. Brambridge is most definitely one of the loveliest.
This picturesque part of Hampshire often attracts a slower pace of life.
It was always predominantly sort of an elder generation place, so people around here were sort of over 50s, 60s.
The community is an aged community. It's not an awful lot of very young people. There are some young people, of course, homes with kids and so on, but the majority of the community is older people.
The Hampshire Hogs, as they're known, they're very proud of their area. The local people who have been here for generations. And, yeah, like everywhere where it's village life, it's lovely.
At the very edge of Brambridge lived a wealthy 77-year-old grandmother, Georgina Edmonds.
Everything that was said about Georgina Edmonds was just a lovely, lovely lady. Well-liked and loved by everyone that knew her, very close to her family, very friendly, and just a charming old lady.
She had grandchildren that she really enjoyed playing with, was always up for a bit of a laugh. Her grandson was a budding filmmaker, and he would make funny little videos at Christmas, and Georgina would star in those as well. And she enjoyed life. You know, she was still very independent. She was still mobile. She drove her car. She would go down to the shops, but she had assistance with that as well.
Well, I knew her because one of the jobs I did at work was, to take the groceries to the dear old souls who couldn't get around. I know she always had her little dogs with her. Rather sweet little things. Very, very friendly. They used to stand up at the window and look out of the window. She was a, delightful person, and nothing to say about her that wasn't nice.
Georgina lived in a large gated estate on the edge of the river.
The Edmonds family were well known in the area. It was Georgina's husband who had founded the family business importing coffee.
Very well-to-do family. Harry, her son, worked in London. The business, I believe, was in Basingstoke. But again, most of the time, they were up in London working hard and would come back to Hampshire at weekends, for rest.
When Georgina's husband sadly passed away, she downsized into the smaller house on the estate.
She moved into the cottage, which is your chocolate box cover cottage itself.
Nice little house, you know, amongst the trees, by the river.
Her son, Harry, took over running the business and moved into the larger house, as you would when you reach an older age. You don't want the bother of all the dusting.
Georgina seemed happy in her new home. But in January 2008, life in the community changes forever.
Police emergency.
This is an emergency. I've just come down to my house. My mother has a cottage 100 yards away.
Right.
I've got no reply from her. I've come in through her bedroom window, which was unlocked. She's lying on the floor in the kitchen, and it looks to me as if she's been hit over the head. She looks as if she's dead.
Okay, calm down for me, sir. What's your name?
My name is Harry Edmonds. I'm her son. I've just walked in. I came in through the window, and I found the house in complete darkness. I've gone through into the kitchen and found my mother's body lying there, and I've been out walking her dog. This looks like a crime scene to me.
Okay, well, try not to touch anything for me.
This is a murder.
Okay, just calm down for me, sir. I'll send someone else for you, okay?
Yeah, please, as soon as possible. I'm she's dead. That's a murder.
It was about 6:15. I was at home, just prepping dinner, and my phone rang, and so I answered the phone, and they said, we've got a suspicious death. I said, okay, tell me about that. And they said, it's an elderly woman been found dead in the kitchen, face down by her son. So I jumped in the car, and it was a miserable, wet, cold January night, blowing a gale, driving through these country roads as we are now.
Paul Barton, Detective Chief Inspector at the time, arrives at Georgina's address, which is already swarmed with a significant police presence.
So just as I'm pulling down here, I can see the blue lights sort of flashing in the pitch black. So I know I'm getting close to it. And then I just come around the bend, and there's some more police activity. A police van and a police car, an ambulance, and some tape here, just across the bridge here. So I just pull in where I'm pulling in now, actually. I walked up the drive. It's a short walk up a gravel drive into the cottage. The kitchen door is on the side of the cottage. I just looked in. I could see, sadly, Georgina was lying there face down with a large amount of blood around her, some stab wounds to her neck. So I was satisfied at that point that we did have something that was a suspicious death.
A murder investigation is launched, and police maintain a secure perimeter in and around Georgina's home.
You only get one go at recovering evidence from a body, and one that is already compromised. There will be a lot of discussion about what should be sampled at the scene, what should be done at the scene, what is going to be compromised by another action. So there will be a lot of effort going into preserving as much evidence as possible.
I actually want this road completely closed. And it's one entrance in, one entrance out, but I didn't want anyone else coming across in. I certainly didn't want the press turning up and having a look. And so immediately what we call a wider cordon was put on, and we blocked the road so that we had complete control of the area.
That morning, we went out for a walk, and as we crossed the road where it leads to her house, there was a policeman standing there. There was a car, the road was blocked. And I said, can you tell me what's happening on this road? There's been a murder.
When the news broke, it was fairly obvious from the beginning that this was going to be a big story. Neighbours would phone the newsroom and say, can you tell us anything about what's going on?
Everybody was talking about it, wherever you went, everybody in all the shops. And there were police everywhere, and you just wouldn't generally see police presence in that area.
The 15 years that we've been here, we haven't seen or we haven't heard of a murder, except for this one. This is the first one.
I think that was quite worrying because, you know, why? Why was this little old lady killed? You know, what was the reason? So it just seemed very, very random and horrible.
It became very obvious very quickly that this was a murder hunt that was out of the ordinary, shall we say.
So what led to a murder in this peaceful village? And why would someone want to kill a well-loved member of the community?
Police emergency.
It's an emergency. I've just walked into the kitchen and found my mother's body lying there. This looks like a crime scene to me. This is a murder.
In the picturesque village of Brambridge, the close-knit community has woken up to the news that a much-loved 77-year-old grandmother, Georgina Edmonds, has been brutally murdered in her home.
It's extremely grim. My mum was 77 at the time and living with us, you know, not very far away. So, yeah, you don't even want to think about it.
It's gone from being a quiet village scenario to then being sort of on the local news, everybody talking about it, what's happened, you know, that type of thing doesn't happen around here.
With a small community in fear of a killer in their midst, it's down to DCI Paul Barton to address the public.
A Saturday morning I was doing my first media briefing and it was packed, you know, and it was Sky News Live, BBC Live, it was headline news, you know, it was Midsummer Murders, kind of a 77-year-old lady murdered brutally. So the nation were interested and the media were interested.
Under a national media spotlight, Hampshire police are under pressure to work out who would kill Georgina Edmonds and why.
I just start sort of kicking into autopilot. The next thing I'm thinking is, well, who's done this? Who's responsible? Any suspicious incident calls in that area in the last 24 hours? Has the victim been a victim of any other crimes? Is there any sort of domestic violence within the household? What do we know about the rest of the family? What do we know about the neighbours?
Was this a stranger murder? Was this someone, though, that she knew? And in such a small village, how did they get in and out of the cottage without being seen?
With a killer on the loose, the finger of suspicion is on every member of the community.
Everybody asking questions. We had so many people come in the pub at the time. You know, did you hear anything? Did you see anything? Do you know who it was? You know.
We go out as the media and knock on doors and try to talk to people and find people that would have known her. When you've only got 5 homes to actually knock on the door, the community, they'll be in shock themselves, actually, about it.
With Georgina's son Harry too distraught to speak, it was left to neighbours to speculate what had happened. Had someone targeted her because of her wealth?
They had a beautiful house, they had quite a bit of money in the family. I just remember that, you know, the money, the big house, the jewellery. It was in a dark, secluded area.
There was nothing else there. There was another house, I think, to the right, I seem to remember. But that's it. She was on her own.
Police conduct a thorough search of Georgina's house for clues.
We were exploring what could have happened. Was it burglary that was the motive? Her credit card had been taken. I believe also a Radley handbag was gone. I think a laptop was gone. But there were other items that were there in the kitchen that were quite valuable. There was monies out, I believe, that were just left. And that seemed rather strange, that this was a burglary that had gone wrong, that the burglar hadn't taken those fairly obvious items that were there.
Police take a closer look at the crime scene, and one significant thing jumps out. There's no sign of a forced entry.
Was this a cover-up? Was it another motive? And so, therefore, had she been targeted in some other way, and it was a pretend burglary, taking just a few things, when a real burglar would have taken lots of things.
With no sign of a break-in, everyone known to Georgina is under suspicion. Could the local community offer clues as to who Georgina may have let into the house?
Trusting. You couldn't have had anyone more trusting. She was that sort of person. She never disputed things, you know, she just trusted people. And sometimes people are a bit suspicious, but she wasn't that type of person.
She was the sort of person, and I guess this is of her age, that would keep her door unlocked. You know, she would talk to strangers. If someone knocked on the door and asked for directions, she wouldn't be suspicious. Probably even offer them a cup of tea and, you know, spend time with people.
With no obvious break-in, detectives are left to speculate whether this was a random attack by a stranger or by someone closer to home.
Quite often, the last person to see the person alive could be the killer. It is odd that a son comes home and finds their mum dead in a kitchen. I've dealt with other jobs where children have killed parents. You know, they may have been off their face on drink or drugs. There may have been a domestic argument that's then gone too far. He could have had an axe to grind with his mother, and he could have killed his mother, and then he's just made up that he's come in and found her dead.
Police reanalyse the 999 call made by Georgina's son, Harry.
I've just walked in and found my mother's body lying there. This looks like a crime scene to me. This is a murder.
It's a strange call, I have to say. He's very calm, but he says she's dead. I think it's a murder, he says. And I remember, you know, we played that time and time again, and it's gone out in the media as well. And, you know, a lot of people thought that was strange.
Police bring Harry in for questioning to establish his movements in the hours his mother was murdered. He tells detectives he was at work all day and did not return home till 6 p.m.
He was concerned because he hadn't heard from his mother all day, and I think he'd been trying to call her. And he went to the cottage and it was in darkness. Harry's managed to force open the ground floor window, I think into Georgina's bedroom. He climbs in, goes into the kitchen and finds Georgina lifeless on the floor in a pool of blood.
Harry's story is quickly verified. Police are still no closer to establishing who had gained access to Georgina's home. So they release CCTV footage of Georgina the day before her death, which shows her holding a handbag, which is now missing, and urge the public for help.
To be honest, most people were pretty appalled anyway, just the fact that an old lady had been murdered without knowing the detail. And generally, everyone was trying to be as helpful as they possibly could.
Well, it was a huge community thing, and they had big things in the village hall. So everyone got together, they all went out searching. Everybody was sort of part of it. Everybody searched, everyone went and looked, and yeah, all together really as a community.
Despite the community's best efforts, Georgina's handbag isn't found. But post-mortem results help police identify the cause of death. Could this lead to clues as to her attacker?
On one level, the death of Georgina Edmonds pathologically is straightforward. She has been struck on the head with a heavy blunt object. Ultimately, it was identified that that was a marble rolling pin. A heavy weapon, a good sort of thing to use to cause damage. But on top of that, you then have the incised wounds, the cuts to the body, inflicted with a degree of deliberation, and you don't really have defensive type injuries. One conclusion that could reasonably be drawn is that if they're not in a place where they are likely to kill you, that they are an act of torture. There is an attempt to distress somebody and extract information.
Police now believe Georgina was tortured before she died.
It was horrific. Terrible. And as more details came out about what the guy had done to her, apparently tortured her, I mean, it got worse and worse.
Eventually, it emerged just the horrible scale of the injuries to Georgina that were allied to trying to find out her PIN number for her credit card.
We established about 5 hours after discovering her body that somebody had attempted to use that cash point card at a local ATM. And we feel that they were trying to get the PIN number out of Georgina.
Police trace CCTV from that local Tesco ATM in nearby Eastleigh. only half a mile away from the murder scene, and see someone attempting to take money out.
They attempted to use the machine a couple of times. I think it swallowed up the card and off it went. So we didn't have a facial image of the person using the ATM machine, but we were confident to say it was a man. And in particular, the user of the ATM machine was wearing a thick fluorescent jacket with a hood up. And the person that approached that clearly knew that that camera was there, because they took all reasonable steps to avoid being seen, keeping their head down, keeping the hood up, etc.
Despite his face being hidden, detectives now have an image of Georgina's killer, and the search for this person intensifies.
This is probably someone who was local or had local connections with Eastleigh. Have we had any offenders that have been released from prison recently in that area on licence? Have we got any registered sex offenders or violent offenders that are in that area? Luckily for me, the duty detective sergeant happened to know that there was a bail hostel called Elderfield House, which was pretty much at the end of the road from Brambridge leading into Otterbourne Village. It's the sort of place that you wouldn't expect to find in an affluent village like Otterbourne or Brambridge, and there are some unpleasant people there.
Behind those trees is Elderfield.
You can just see the rooftop over there.
These are people that had done time in prison, and after their term was over, they've sent them here.
It was a halfway house, basically.
It's a halfway house.
It was somewhere where they could sort of spend time and sort of rehabilitate and get back into normal life. And they would hang around in groups and get very drunk. And it was not nice. It was quite a bit unsettling.
It is of some concern in that you don't know what's going to happen next.
You would often get some of them escape, or they would then get out and they aren't supposed to be out. Danger, I guess it was described as.
Police question the residents of Elderfield to establish their movements on the night of Georgina's murder.
There were 4 people that were unaccounted for that night. I think 3 had come back late. Within 24 hours or so, we declared 4 people as suspects from Elderfield House. And we arrested them, searched their rooms, brought them back to the police station, forensically examined them, and then put them through the interview process.
After hours of questioning, it soon becomes clear to detectives that 3 of the suspects had clear alibis and are released without charge. But the 4th did not return to Elderfield for 24 hours during the night Georgina was murdered. And his clothing is of particular interest to police.
CCTV showed this fluorescent jacket, which was really key. And in our search in Elderfield House, we established that one of the residents who was unaccounted for on the night was wearing a big fluorescent jacket. He had previous convictions for murder or manslaughter. And so he was of particular interest and excitement to the team at that time.
But police are able to verify the 4th man's alibi, and he is released without charge. And with no suspect or clear motive, fear begins to escalate across the local community.
It's unsettling. It's unknown because the police don't tell you exactly what's happening, especially when they say, well, we haven't found him yet, we're still looking out for him, So where is he?
It was quite scary. My family were saying to me, don't go out on your own at night, don't go out to the car park on your own. It definitely makes you change the way you behave, the way you think. For ages, people didn't go to the garden centre. That was really affected by the whole situation, because I just think people thought it was a dangerous area to go to, so they didn't go there.
They were getting more and more concerned and worried that this is someone still here then, is it? Are we to believe that this is a stranger of someone that was passing through, just happened to pick the cottage, just happened to find that the door was open, going there, carry out this terrible crime, and then just drive away and leave the area utterly and completely, and that's it? Or is it more likely that the perpetrator is still here amongst us?
It's been 1 month since much-loved grandma, Georgina Edmonds, was found murdered in her home in Brambridge, and police are yet to charge anyone for the heinous crime.
It was in the media daily, you know, any newspaper stat you saw it. It was on the news, it was on the radio. We had boards up everywhere, and if you lived in the area as well, you couldn't miss it. Everyone knew what was going on.
I think at the time there was an urgency to get this one done, to get it sorted.
The only sighting detectives have is by a Tesco ATM machine in nearby Eastleigh. And so the investigation to find this man spotted on CCTV escalates.
We knew that Georgina's card had been attempted to be used. Then obviously that, for me, becomes an area of concentration for house to house. So we had police patrols in the area, certainly at the Tesco Express. We wanted to capture anyone that was there at the material time. So we obviously pulled the CCTV from the petrol station itself. We could read all the registration numbers of the cars coming in. And then we had the obvious houses sort of adjacent to Tesco Express and then right opposite. And so I decided that we would focus house to house in that area as well, knocking on doors. Again, good old-fashioned detective work.
And it isn't long before one address catches police attention.
There was a raid on a house that wasn't far from where the cash point had been, where the person in the frame had been using the debit card.
There was a particular address not a million miles away from the ATM machine where a man lived up until the point of around about the 11th of January and then disappeared. The inquiries that we did identified that he was Polish and had gone back to Poland. And he may have also had some previous convictions, so I sent the team out to Poland.
Suddenly, the news story goes international.
We had reports that the police had actually gone out to Poland to carry out inquiries.
There was a lot of media interest in this particular case, and then the media were descending on us, and they would put two and two together and come up with murderer, fled to Poland and all this. You know, got the community kind of excited, if you like, because they were thinking, oh, great, they finally caught that person.
Police question the Polish man regarding his movements on the night Georgina was murdered. Have they finally found their killer?
He was alibied, and also, I think, through DNA as well, we were able to eliminate him from the inquiry.
With the Polish man in the clear, Hampshire police are back in the UK and back to square one. So they release a clearer version of the CCTV footage to the public and suspect the person is a male aged between 16 and 60 with an estimated height of 5'11". The hunt for this man accelerates to new levels.
We wanted DNA swabs from males matching that description to come forward. Our view was, if you've got nothing to hide, come forward.
You can't force people to do that kind of thing. But what this did, of course, was to add to the suspicion in the community. But they would have come forward because feeling, well, if I don't, then suspicion's going to fall on me. I must admit that, in my experience, I've never come across a mass DNA appeal anywhere that I've worked before. It was certainly turning into something that's, well, a modern-day thriller.
More than 2,000 local men have their DNA swabbed, but there are no immediate results, and the case goes cold. Two and a half years later, and Georgina's killer is still at large. But on the 30th of June, 2010, things take a dramatic turn. An arrest is made. And it's a local man. 31-year-old Matthew Hamlin.
We scramble to find out who this man is. He's got a history of violence, and, you know, he's not a nice guy to know.
Matthew Hamlin was known to police. He'd been known for drug usage and also violence in the past. He had a off-on relationship with a local girl. In fact, he'd had an argument with her and resulted in hitting her with an ironing board, and she moved out of the home. He had quite a bad drug habit at that time, using cocaine, and we understand he also racked up numerous debts as a result of his drug usage. And so that kind of fitted the profile of somebody high on drugs, desperate, and probably not really thinking what they're doing.
You can understand that the police would be interested in him. He used to walk his dog along the riverbank there and would know the area quite well. So he fitted in one of the profiles, shall we say, for the police.
But what exactly led to Matthew's arrest?
One particularly interesting subject came to them with a couple of bits of evidence. The first was that despite he denying that he had been in the area on that particular day and time, his phone records were showing that he actually was there.
This person had a mobile phone, and what we could show was that their phone was bouncing off the same cell mast on the afternoon of the 11th of January.
With Hamlin in custody, police waste no time in recording his every word when his mum visits.
The other thing is I might have an alibi for it as well.
What do you mean?
When they first interviewed me, I ain't got a clue where I was. And Sarah got out her diary and she flipped through, looked at the date and she said, yeah, you was with me.
I can speak to Sarah.
Yeah. See if she's still going to make that.
I think she was trying to be helpful for him. And I guess, you know, if you think about it, you don't want to think your child is responsible for doing such a grave crime. And so I would imagine she was desperate.
I haven't spoken to them for ages. I haven't fallen out of them, but I ain't spoken to them. So whether she's still going to say that or not, but I can't remember it. I was off my head all the time. I was drunk. I don't know what I was doing. I don't know where I was 2.5 years ago. I struggled where I was last week.
It was quite clear in that recording that he was trying to manufacture an alibi at that time that would take him out of the area at the material time when Georgina was murdered.
As well as Hamlin's mobile phone pinging on a nearby mast, linking him to the scene, new evidence comes to light, which police believe is even more conclusive.
The other bit was partial DNA that was found on the rolling pin, and also, I believe, on a small part of her clothing. That was a partial match to this particular subject. Putting the two together, and he came right to the top.
Eventually, the scientists were able to show some components of that mixed profile were 2,600 times more likely to be attributable to Matthew Hamlin. We were fairly confident that Hamlin was responsible.
After a manhunt that lasted years, it seems police have finally found their man. And Matthew Hamlin is charged with Georgina's murder. Matthew pleads not guilty, and 10 months later, the trial begins at Winchester Crown Court.
You're nervous, you're excited, you've got the victim's family up in the gallery, your QC opens up the case, you hear what's being said, and you sit back and think, that sounds pretty good. You know, if I'm on the jury, I'd be thinking, guilty.
The prosecution lay out a mountain of evidence against Matthew Hamlin. And after a 3-month trial, the jury returns with its verdict.
When the call came through, I remember the news desk saying to me, it's not guilty. At that moment, it was one of those moments in the newsroom where you get that stunned silence.
They don't happen that often. So when they do, and when it's such an important case like that, you can't really describe it. It's just a punch in the guts, you know. Yes, professionally, you're disappointed for yourself, you know, and your team, but it's the family, you know, you really feel for. And, you know, you do question, could we have done more, you know? Did we have the wrong person, you know? Is there somebody out there that's done this that we haven't caught?
And you think about the community. The community had lived with this for 4 years. They believed that the monster amongst them had been caught and was now going to get his just desserts. And now it wasn't. And according to the court, he's not the monster at all. Well, who is the monster?
Despite a 2.5-year manhunt and becoming Hampshire Constabulary's most expansive investigation, Matthew Hamlin has been acquitted of Georgina Edmonds' murder, leaving her family the community and the police feeling devastated and in shock.
Well, we're back now to square one. The mystery continues. The courts have cleared him. So who is it? Is it my neighbour? Is it my friend? Is it someone in my family? Is it someone I work with?
You always have to be open-minded, and you have to accept that actually Hamlin didn't do it, and there is someone else out there.
With the case unsolved, the possibility of the killer getting away with murder looms over police.
Are the police looking for anyone else? Is the case closed? And the police were quite adamant that the case remained open, that they were carrying on their investigations.
So obviously we have a debrief. We'll meet with counsel as well. We'll speak with the family. We will conduct a review of that investigation to see if there are anything we missed, anything we could have done, mainly because so lessons can be learned, because once somebody's been acquitted, that's it.
Detectives go back to the drawing board and relook at all the evidence they have collated over the years and examine what went wrong.
We spent millions of pounds on this investigation, the most expensive investigations that Hampshire police have ever run, and the forensic budget was through the roof.
Beforehand, they had looked for his DNA on the marble rolling pin, but graphically there was so much of Georgina Edmonds' blood on that blurred everything, and they got just a partial sample. And then from another small part of her clothing, where again it was a partial sample. I mean, you're asking a jury to put someone away for life on the grounds of circumstantial evidence and also partial DNA. It's too cloudy, and I think juries can then look at it and say, can I actually send a man away for life on evidence here which is not the strongest?
Police spend years looking for new techniques to forensically identify a killer. And they eventually come across a recent form of DNA testing called YSTR, which extracts the male DNA profile from a full DNA profile.
It's a simple process, and it's almost sellotape on clothing and points of the body to remove skin cells. So it's fairly early on in the exhibits that we've taken of the left sleeve of Georgina's blouse, which would have had skin cells on there. And so the decision was taken to look at those skin cells and examine them, because we hadn't done so far. We'd done the waistband, but not the sleeve. And then obviously it went for analysis, number crunching, etc. And it came back with a full male profile.
On Thursday, 30th of October 2014, police make an announcement. They have arrested and charged a suspect for the murder of Georgina Edmonds. As a new trial looms, people want to know, who is in the frame? None other than Matthew Hamlin.
This is incredible. They're going to put him back on trial. It wouldn't have been allowed because double jeopardy meant you could not be tried for the same crime in this country. That had only been changed a few years prior to that, which enabled this to actually happen.
Despite the double jeopardy rules changing in 2003 and a new stack of DNA evidence, how did detectives manage to get Hamlin's charge over the line?
It's not an easy thing to do for obvious reasons. The defence argued that it's not new evidence, you had it all along, you just chose not to examine it and find it. But actually, it's not evidence until you've actually turned it into evidence. And that was the ruling of Sir Brian Leveson, who heard that at the Court of Appeal, who then quashed the acquittal, and we were able to then go for a retrial.
January 2016, exactly 8 years after Georgina's murder, the second trial of Matthew Hamlin begins at Winchester Crown Court. The prosecution lay out all their evidence once again, including their new secret weapon, the YSTR DNA technique.
We were hoping for a better outcome this time.
It's 1 in 26 million, that DNA, that it's not him.
And when you describe that, you know, there's 26 million to 1 is this person, I think it was a fairly easy decision for the jury to make. Layered on top of that was, obviously, he was a local person, violent background, and obviously the phone was bouncing off the mast at the time.
Despite presenting their new evidence in court, there are many in the community who are unconvinced that Matthew Hamlin is the killer. At the time of the second trial, Matthew is a changed man, leaving behind his days of drug taking, working full-time as an electrician and raising his family. And after a grueling 6-week trial, the jury retires to consider the verdict.
When you do get to court and the prosecution and the defence have had their say and the judge has summed up, you still get a bit nervous, even though you just know in your heart of hearts that it's a really, really strong case.
So we can't speculate, we can't talk to people about, well, you know, what do you think this time? Do you think he's going to get off a second time?
On the 23rd of February 2016, the jury return with a verdict.
8 years after Georgina Edmonds, aged 77 years, was found dead at her home in Banbridge, Matthew Hamlin has today been found guilty of her brutal murder.
It was just a sense of relief and just great work, and so many people, bear in mind this investigation had gone on for years really, and so many people have got involved in that investigation. But it was just such a nice feeling.
Throughout this entire investigation, we have been absolutely determined to prove beyond reasonable doubt who committed this horrific crime. After the discovery of new evidence and presenting it to the Court of Appeal, we were able to try Matthew Hamlin again for the murder of Georgina Edmonds. The whole prosecution team were determined to find justice for Georgina, and today that has been achieved.
Being stood there, listening to Harry address the media and just say some really nice words about me and my colleagues and Hampshire Police and all the work that we've done to get justice for the family. So yeah, just a great feeling.
The entire team of police officers, police staff, prosecution barristers, forensic scientists and colleagues from the Crown Prosecution Service have been absolutely dedicated to putting together the best possible case that could be put before the court and the jury. Every moment has been worth it to see justice finally served and the killer of Georgina Edmonds behind bars. Thank you.
With Matthew Hamlin finally behind bars, the question that still puzzles the community is why would he want to end the life of Georgina Edmonds so brutally, torturing her before battering her to death?
Who can say, and it's difficult for me to speculate. Well, we know now from the court case, although he's never admitted it, that he was short of money, that he had walked along the riverbank and he had found his way in the cottage, whether that was just by pure chance, whether he had seen her walking her dogs and had known that she was gone there and she was a vulnerable old lady. Sadly, whether he would have known or not, that the door was left open when he went in. He had tortured her to reveal the number for her debit card by stabbing her something like 27 times and then just leave her there, tie her up or something like that. But then it all got, who knows what it is. But I think what we can tell is that he is a pretty evil, nasty guy who will spend 30 years in prison.
And after 8 long years of fear, can normal life return for the local community?
It's so close to reality for us here that, you know, it's traumatic for all of us in the village.
They're vulnerable too, you know, so trusting. I know we all felt very, very sorry for her. Yeah, very sorry.